Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's ranking of Star Trek's ships. This video is part of a series of videos where I rank usually characters from Star Trek of a certain position from all the different Star Trek shows. However, in this video I will be tackling ships instead of characters. So I will be looking at the ships of each of the known Star Trek shows and ranking them to my personal preference of which ship I think is the best. So I think I should start by saying I've never been a huge fan of like ship design and ships I haven't really been into. I know some people are really into it and some people complain when certain new Star Trek shows come out and they release the ship. Oh, this ship design is awful and stuff like that, but I've never really cared much about that personally. It just hasn't really been my thing. However, as part of this series where I'm ranking all the doctors and ranking all the captains and all the helmsmen, I thought, why not rank the ships as well? So I'll try my best to give my opinion on which ship I think is the best. Now, I will be looking at aesthetics, how the ship looks, ship design, practicality, how it's been used in the story, and and what its use is and how practical it is and stuff like that. So, the ships that I will be ranking, and I will only be ranking one ship per a Star Trek show. So I won't rank the Enterprise D and the Enterprise E. Well, that was the movies, and E was the movies anyway. But only one ship per show, so I won't be ranking like other like Nebula class starships or Excelsior ships that just so happen to appear. I'm only gonna rank one ship per show. So these ships that I will be ranking from the original series, I'll be ranking the Enterprise NCC 1701. From Next Generation, I'll be ranking the Enterprise D. From Deep Space Nine, the USS Defiant. From Voyager is Voyager, of course. From Enterprise is the Enterprise NX-01. From Discovery is, of course, Discovery. And from Picard is the La Serena, and from Lower Decks, the Cerritos. So, these are the shows that are out currently. I know the Prodigy show is coming out soon. That's bringing another ship, but as of the recording of this video, that show is yet to be released. So these are the shows that or the ships from the shows I'll be ranking. So I'll start with, at the bottom, with my least favorite ship, and finish with my favorite one. So let me start, at the bottom with La Serena from Star Trek Picard. I guess I've never been a huge fan of the ship design. It looks kind of generic to me, but the main reason why it comes in at the bottom is because this is a mercenary ship that operates in the Federation with Federation officers. It was like a ship for hire, which goes against the ethos of Star Trek because the Federation's not supposed to use money. I'm sorry, I know I'm one of those guys who complain about that, but yeah, that never made any sense to me. That didn't track, and the whole thing with Rios being this rogue Han Solo type is too much of a Han Solo type. It's too obvious they're trying to be like Star Wars, and I feel the ship in some ways is trying to be like the Millennium Falcon. So I really hold that against this ship. So that's why that reaches the bottom for me. Second is the Enterprise D. Now, the Enterprise D comes in second to last mainly for the ship design, for the aesthetics of the external of the ship, because it looks really lopsided and wonky, particularly in certain shots. It never looked as sleek as some of the other ships. The salsa section is too big for this tiny little star drive section, so it looks really disproportionate. The practicality of the ship this would probably, if there was a ship that I personally would want to serve on and live in, it would be this ship. But that's not how I'm ranking them, because of course it's like a luxury like cruiser that has like all these luxurious rooms, holodecks, and tin forward and all that sort of thing. So it would be the most comfortable ship to surf on. But in terms of practicality of going where no one has gone before, out into the unknown, is probably the least practical. And the whole like saucer separation thing seems completely unnecessary and redundant. And so that's why that ranks here for me. Next ship on my list will be the Discovery, which is fine. Is fine. I think the people who are complaining about design, saying, "Oh, it looks awful" or a bit ridiculous, I never had an issue with it. But that being said, the aesthetics don't really strike me. Like I don't hate it. I wasn't complaining. Thinking it's an ugly ship. I actually think it's less ugly than the Enterprise D. But I'm not a huge fan of it either. It's just down the line for me. It does rank a bit higher than the other ships because of the sport drive, which is a huge bonus to it. And I do like how the outer ring like spins around when they are operating the sport drive. That makes it very practical. But other than that, it seemed just like an ordinary ship. So, next on my list is the Enterprise NCC 1701. So, yeah, it's hard to rank this because this is the most classic, most iconic ship in Star Trek. Obviously, it's the one everyone has ingrained in their heads. So, I have to kind of try to look past that when comparing it to the other ships. But I do think it's like the classic design that all other ships in the show were based off from. I'm talking from writing standpoint, not from the in universe standpoint. This is what the classic design, which they branched off all other designs. So it's kind of hard to compare the aesthetics in that way, but in terms of practicality, it seemed to serve its purpose. It seemed to make a lot of sense for the story. So it's kind of my straight down the middle ship, where it doesn't completely blow me away in any ways, but it's not bad in any ways either. So that's kind of why that ranks there. So next ship on my list is going to be the Enterprise NX-01, which this ranks a bit higher because I think this sort of fits with the time. Now, obviously, I'm allowing for the different time periods it stands on because the later ships in the later years, particularly to the TNG Voyager era, is going to have a lot more. The ship's going to be better. They're going to have a lot better technology, and they're going to be able to go faster. But I had to take into account the different time periods when ranking them. And I think for this time period, this is probably one of the more practical ships. This is one of the things I liked about the show Enterprise the best, is that the ship design does fit the time that it's in, that the transporters are very new, and because this is a new era, and the Warp 5 drive was like a big thing for its time, was a huge accomplishment for the first ship from Earth to actually go deep space exploring. And so the ship design in it seems very practical, even more practical than the Enterprise from the original series, because that had a lot of like long attachments and stuff, where this is a bit more straightforward. It's closer, more, I don't know, it just looks like a more practical design to me. So that's why that ranks there for me. So the next ship on my list will be the Cerritos from Star Trek Lower Decks. And because and I heard some people complaining about this ship's design too, but I actually really like this. This is a design I really like because this it's the California class, and it most resembles the Nebula class, which is my favorite ship design. It's always been my favorite type of ship in Star Trek, but it's not on this list because it was never a main ship of a particular show. So this comes the closest to it. I kind of dinged it for the fact that that the crew quarters for the lower deckers, they all have to sleep in a quarter. That I've ranted against that. That seems like completely impractical for 24th century Starfleet. Any ship that's not short range to have quarters like that, I think is completely ridiculous. But then again, it's a comedy show, so I have to give some allowances for that. But it mainly ranks aside for the aesthetics, the way that the ship looks. I actually love it. So coming in second to the top will be the Defiant from Deep Space Nine. This again is most practical for what it is, and it's unique in Starfleet, which is probably why it ranks as high as being a warship. I know someone corrected me once, said it's technically an escort ship. Come on. In practicality, this is a warship. That's why it was created. It was created to defend against the Borg attack, and then it was used during the Dominion War. So it is a warship. It has always been a short-range ship. So it makes sense that it's attached to a space station and not out exploring. And so when they have like the tight quarters, people have to share bunks, that makes sense because it's a short-range warship. It wasn't meant to go travel out into deep space, and the design is very sleek. Doesn't have unnecessary appendages, and seeing that thing in action for the first time, where using quantum torpedoes, where it just is like a giant gun going, it makes a lot of sense that Starfleet would have to create a warship like this, especially after the Borg scare, where they nearly lost everything. So that's why that ranks so high for me. So at the top of my list, the best ship in Star Trek, in my humble opinion, is going to be the USS Voyager. Now, the Voyager, I think I like this best for its sleek design. It's kind of like the Defiant, but it does have appendages, which actually makes sense that the nacelles would be further away from the ship too, because they create a warp field. Having where there's a ship like the Defiant, where the nacelles are basically attached to the ship, kind of doesn't make any sense. But of course, the nacelles can raise and lower depending on if they're actually in use or not, which again I think is great. Seems really practical to me. It's kind of a mix between the Enterprise D and something like the Cerritos, where it's not a complete luxury liner, but it's more comfortable for it makes more sense for the 24th century. Like that I said, the Cerritos with the lower decker sleep in the hallway makes no sense to me, but Voyager has that mix where it's not like complete a Hilton hotel-esque type thing like the Enterprise D, which isn't practical for exploring space, but it's in between. It's not the let's sleep in a quarter type thing. So it makes the most sense to me. The biometric circuitry or whatever it was that was in the ship, that seemed to be unnecessary. Is something that when they're creating the show, let's have this huge idea, and it never come into play except when it malfunctions. So it seems like, what's the point of it if the only thing it's going to do is make it cause more problems and be something else that could go wrong? But I suppose they're saying it's what helps the ship sort of travel faster and be more efficient, but they never really used that as much. And then of course, in terms of practicality, during the show they had 7 and 9 came aboard, and they created things like the astrometrics lab, which was like amazing one. It always like solved all the problems that they incurred, and they were able to analyze things better. And it's something that hadn't really been seen before in Star Trek. So yeah, I'm going to have to go with the USS Voyager as the best ship in Star Trek. So that is it for my ranking of Star Trek ships. I think I only have a couple more of these ranking videos left to do. I have my Mary Sue video, and then after that I'm going to take all the winners of all of my ranking ships, put them together, and come up with my dream team, my dream crew of Star Trek once I'm done that. So keep an eye out for that. Also for more Star Trek content on my channel, as well as I cover other shows like The Expanse, Better Call Saul, Star Wars, Clone Wars, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.